I've been detained by Thai government and Bangkok airport for my personal safety and don't want to face any accident or trouble anymore. I choose to deliver my speech through Skype rather than come to Singapore and to share my experience. Yeah, so sorry for the some of the inconvenience. Okay, so now I will share my story. How from a normal high school student to organizer of civil disobedience. In 2011, it will be the year for us to found scholarism. The high school student activist group is the year of Hong Kong government that hope to introduce the brainwashing school education school curriculum and to force every primary and secondary school student to embrace the Communist Party of China. So rather than rely on the teachers or politicians, I think time for us to through direct action and activism to uh, to elaborate or to show the dissatisfaction of student in the school. So I is the year I found scholarism and through street promotion, rally, demonstration, and various campaigns, finally we result in a high school student hunger strike. And in 2012, we have organized the anti-brainwashing education movement with occupying outside the government headquarters with 200,000 people. And with that assembly that occupied outside of government headquarters for 10 days with more than 100,000 people, is the first civil disobedience I organized in the previous day. Because according to the law and regulation, if we organize an assembly more than 50 people without the permission or authorization from police, it already can identify as an illegal assembly. So it's the first experience for me to join into a civil disobedience. And later on, after successfully, we have forced the Hong Kong government to put aside the brainwashing school education school curriculum with high school student hunger strike and 100,000 people civil disobedience. We continue to fight for universal suffrage, for chief executive and legislative council election, and which means that in Hong Kong, what we hope is just to through civil disobedience and direct action to deliver our dissatisfaction. And as the photo you guys have seen is the protest organized by scholarism in 2013. And there's around few thousand or maybe maybe 5,000 people join into a strike and just hope to through this rally this without the permission from police force to show our anger and dissatisfaction to the ruling class. And in 2014, you guys may know about the umbrella movement with the tear gas used by the police force and the pepper spray they have choose to attack the activists. While the activists in Hong Kong still persist on peace and non-violence, we just through our passion and courage and to start the umbrella movement, we've set up the umbrella to protect ourselves and the tent to occupy on the main road outside of the government headquarters for 79 days. And it is also the year for me to be suddenly appear in the Time magazine cover. Yes. And in 2015, we continue to advocate the right of self-determination and even establish the political party that Sisto. And finally, we've sent the chairperson, Nathan Law, also another one of the umbrella movement student leader to run in the election. And finally, he won a seat in the Legislative Council and become the youngest lawmaker in Hong Kong history. And he's just 23 years old and also same like me, still a university student. And after a brief review on my experience of participating in social movement, I would like to share about the situation in Hong Kong by some of the cases or elaborate more on a recent development. And as the economists have reported to that to say that China's new Tibet the failure of one country, two systems. As the Fortune magazine in 1997 used the death of Hong Kong to be the main title or for the magazine. I would like to elaborate more on a recent situation. First, it will be the ignoring the promise of universal suffrage. According to the mini constitution of Hong Kong, which is the basic law, it would say that the chief executive, which means the leader of Hong Kong, shall be elected by election. However, since handover from 1997 till now, nearly 20 years, in Hong Kong, even we have 7 million residents, now there's only 1,200 pro-Beijing or pro-Communist Party elites can vote in the chief executive election. And even Beijing have promised to implement universal suffrage since Hanover. They have just continually delayed the promise from 1997 to 2007 to 2012 and 2017. And even I would say that after the end of umbrella movement, we just recognize how the Communist Party of China have broke the promise in the international treaty, which means the uh, Sino-British Joint Declaration, and it results in more of the activism, the rise of demanding self-determination. And the second incident that we face in Hong Kong in social movement will be eroding high degree of autonomy. In the early of this year, around January, booksellers were kidnapped by pro-Beijing force from Hong Kong to mainland. And in Hong Kong, we existence of cross-border abduction for 6 months without any normal entry procedure, which means one of book publisher of Hong Kong selling some books that's criticizing the communist regime and one day suddenly be disappeared in Hong Kong and have been kidnapped by the pro-Beijing force from Hong Kong to mainland China. And that guy is even actually holding the British passport, usually should identify as a British citizen. And the news have been reported by BBC, Financial Times, and also the Guardian, quite a lot of the international media. But what recognized by Hong Kong is even in the basic law, it have claimed that the freedom of the person of Hong Kong residents shall be inviolable, and residents shall have freedom of speech and freedom of publication. But after the bookseller kidnapped incident, it just implied on the end of one country, two system, and also it already implied that Hong Kong turned to be a semi-authoritarian regime instead of we are still moving forward towards the democratization process. And also, in the recent year development, I would say that the election system and also the political reform trend of Hong Kong is more similar with Singapore. Um, with the abuse of constitutional power, the Standing Committee of National uh, People Republic Congress, I mean the China government, they have the new interpretation of the basic law, which means that in basic law article 158, it claimed that um, the Standing Committee of National People Congress, they gain a chance to interpret on the of the current basic law by refer to Beijing interests and can override the judicial independence and legislature. And in the recent development, Beijing have just brought two pro-Hong Kong independence lawmakers to take office, which means that two democratic elected legislator that totally get 60,000 votes in on September election because Beijing have identified that they have crossed the bottom line of Beijing. So after the new interpretation, and actually I would recognize it as the amendment of the basic law, anyone that demand Hong Kong independence would not be able uh, to run in the election or maintain their seat in the Legislative Council anymore. Even they have already been democratically elected. And I would just say that what we worry is in the future, what we will face an electoral authoritarian, which will just similar with Singapore. Today, if they block the pro-independence politician to run in the legislative council election, the future and the day may come for them to disqualify the lawmaker that upholds self-determination. And finally, they may disqualify all of the politician in the legislative council that agree on ending one-party dictatorship. So, I would say that since the transfer of sovereignty of Hong Kong, the destiny of Hong Kong is already in the hand of Beijing and British, and even in the decolonizational process, Hong Kongers can determine the future of Hong Kong. Since 1981, while People's Republic of China formally became an United Nations member, and successfully they have sent a letter and to cancel Hong Kong out from the list of colonies. And according to the United Nations Charter, originally Hong Kong being a colony, we should gain a chance to through self-determination to determine the future of Hong Kong. Unfortunately, after the China ambassador have cancelled Hong Kong out from the list of colonies, so we come through a referendum or self-determination procedure to determine the future of Hong Kong, and it's the history in 1972. And in 1982, in the Hong Kong future negotiation, is the future negotiation of Hong Kong to to tackle on the sovereignty problem. And Beijing just rejected Hong Kongers send any representative to join in the negotiation. And in 1982, the future of Hong Kong was just on the hand of Beijing and UK. And it just resulted in 1984, the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Uh, Apart from Hong Kongers have lost the right of self-determination, and finally, the sovereignty of Hong Kong will transfer from British to China government, and Hong Kong will become a special administrative region. And even in the joint declaration, this international treaty would claim that Hong Kong will have one country, two system, high degree autonomy, and Hong Kong was ruling Hong Kong. It seems that those promises just exist in name only, and it's really violate or contradict with the reality, especially the bookseller kidnapping incident and how the Beijing government will disqualify the democratically elected lawmaker. And in 1996, the mini constitution of Hong Kong, which means the basic law, passed after the Tiananmen Square incident without the authorization from Hong Kongers, because the basic law drafting committee actually was dominated by pro-Beijing force, and we can't get any chance to give any amendment on it. So I would say that uh, after in 1997, after the year of handover, what we have recognized is the social movement of Hong Kong is just the path or the trend of presenting how the destiny of Hong Kong is still in the hand of Beijing. And even before the handover, people may identify Hong Kong as a country without democracy, but still have approximation of freedom and liberty. But after the handover, with the erode of one country, two system, rapid decrease of high degree autonomy, and the destiny or future of Hong Kong is just in the hand of Beijing, it seems that Hong Kong is really far away to fight for our rights. And it's also the reason for us to fight for self-determination instead of just focusing on the rights to vote in the election. What we hope is to through a democratic procedure to determine the sovereignty and also the constitution of Hong Kong, which means that what the new generation or the activists in Hong Kong believe might be Hong Kongers should get the right to amend our own constitution and to decide our own sovereignty instead of all of the things rely or depends on Beijing government. And what we hope or what we worry about is will that be the end of Hong Kong? But I would say that with the recent development, it's necessary for us to get more international community connection. Is also the reason for me to come to share my speech in Singapore, because even we have different cultural background and history of political system. But if we still recognize that we are under the rule of government that always violate on human rights and freedom, and we also share some of the similar background, just as we may also recognize as the influential financial center in Asia and also the business center in Asia Pacific. I think with the similar background or some of the common ground, it would be great for us to have more of the experience to share. So back to the topic that I would share about is about civil disobedience. I would say that because Hong Kong we have the assembly or the candle night for Tiananmen Square massacre, the Tiananmen Square incident, and every year at least 100,000 people will have the we'll have the assembly in Victoria Park and to voice out our disagreement and our demand of end of one-party dictatorship. And also, every year in the anniversary of the handover, we will have the rally to show our demand on democracy and universal suffrage with maybe 300,000 people. So in Hong Kong, even we are facing the electoral authoritarian, I would say that we still have some of the hope, or the civil society is still continually rapidly strengthen its bargaining power. Um, so I would like to say it's under the rule of communist regime, which is the largest authoritarian regime in the world. But what we hope is just maintain the uniqueness of Hong Kong, elaborate more of the situation of my country to the international community. And if we no matter people live in Hong Kong or Singapore, we are also under the rule of the government that violating those universal values. I just hope that we can share more experience and our care on activists. And no matter on how Hong Kongers in the future can support more activism, social movement, or the human rights activists in Singapore, just like in the recent month or recent year, how Hong Kongers also show our support to MOC, and how maybe people in Singapore will also care about the umbrella movement. I would just hope to give a simple conclusion. Sometimes fight for democracy and human rights is quite downhearted and depressed, because it's a long-term battle to fight with the authoritarian regime that have unlimited resources and they have already dominated or control the media, and it's hard for us to break through the barrier. But I would just hope to remind every members of the ruling class in Hong Kong and Singapore. Today, uh, they are determining our future, but the day will come for the new generation to decide their future. No matter what happens to the protest movement in Hong Kong and Singapore, we will still reclaim the democracy and human rights and freedom that belongs to us, because time is on our side. And it's the end of my sharing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joshua. Please stay on Skype. We will have a Q&A after our last speaker, who is Kirsten Han. Kirsten is a local freelance journalist and also an activist with We Believe in Second Chances, group which campaigns for the abolition of the death penalty. So I'll pass it over to Kirsten.